As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a bodybuilder. Nah, just kidding. Uh, well, okay. Welcome to my second ramble. Got my coffee here and headphones and all that stuff. We're good to go. So, uh, I want to talk about why I stopped training like a bodybuilder in my fitness journey. So, I kind of basically I just realized that I just wasn't training for the life that I really wanted. For years, I trained exactly like someone trying to become a bodybuilder. I had all the sets, reps, weight for my body weight, for how I was eating, if I was in a bulking or cutting phase or what have you. And why? Why was I doing that? I don't know. Um, no, that's also a lie. I do know. I thought that's what my goal was. I thought I wanted to be a bodybuilder. And it was a great goal to have because it gave me something to train for. For one, it gave me kind of a sense of purpose, a goal. Coming out of high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I thought bodybuilding. I was getting into fitness, and that definitely seemed like the right way to go. I'm not saying bodybuilding is bad, actually, and really it taught me a lot along the way about not just about fitness and physical education in that way, but also about me, who I am, what do I want. Um, Somewhere along the way of that goal, of that journey to bodybuilding, I realized I was chasing goals that weren't actually mine. And more or less, this is sort of how that happened and where I want to go with it from here. So let's start by talking about how I fell in love with lifting. Fitness filled a void for me. Now, I started out my physical fitness career, we'll say, with lacrosse. Now, I played a lot of sports before that, all the main sports, but lacrosse is really where I fell in love with sports, and that's what I stuck with the most. I did that for about 10 years, all the way up through high school until COVID hit. Um, and it was a seasonal thing, so there was always an off season, and I'd try to be busy. I'd usually have a job or something like that, but starting to work out a little more outside of my lacrosse time because I had to be physically fit for the sport. COVID comes around and puts an end to all of that. I'm sure everyone is super familiar with what COVID did to everyone. Can't be good, not good for anyone. Basically, stopped everything. And COVID ended the lacrosse season about 2 weeks in. Suddenly, I have lots of free time. I'm missing the camaraderie. I'm missing being pushed hard and having uh, exercise. I mean, at this point, I didn't realize the mental benefits that exercise had on me, especially on kids. And I realize that now, of course, but 2020 hindsight, right? But I was missing that structure, the competition, missing toward some goal to work towards something. Lacrosse, you got to practice 4 or 5 days a week so you can play 2 games a week at the other schools there, and try to win. And you need to practice to do that. So I didn't have that anymore. What do I resort to? Well, doing push-ups in my room. The only thing I knew about exercise on my own was push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups. Now, notice I didn't have any lower body stuff in there at this point, but that's okay. You got to start somewhere, and I knew that push-ups, pull-ups, and sit-ups were important, or that's what I thought was important at the time. So that's where I began. But eventually, after working up to 400 push-ups a day and 100 pull-ups and at least 50 sit-ups, like that's kind of where that was my threshold. That was kind of like the peak of what I was doing. I'd break that up. I was starting to get into my own sets and reps. I'd say, okay, today I'm doing, all right, actually this was an everyday occurrence. I would do push-ups, probably about 30 to 50 reps within per set. And I would scale that. So if I would do 30 reps, I would do maybe 10 sets of 30. Kind of crazy. And the same goes for the pull-ups. I would do 10 pull-ups because I could get to 10, and I would do 10 sets of 10. These are kind of strange workouts for, well, to start out with, but I didn't have any guidance. This is all just my own kind of creation, what I thought was right. But eventually these bodyweight exercises weren't enough for me. The push-ups were getting too easy, Now I couldn't do 200 push-ups in one sitting, mind you, but that's not the point. The point is that I was trying to do these push-ups, and it wasn't really improving anything, because at this point, COVID had gotten me to be a little bit on the, shall I say, heavier side. There was a lot of nothing going on, and it was very easy to just kind of stay on my computer all day. I was watching YouTube, which kind of leads me to my next point here, which is the YouTube rabbit hole that I fell into and that many others can probably say they've fallen into as well. So YouTube became my coach. There are many big names that I started hearing about, they're on fitness, and COVID sparked it kind of blew the fitness industry out of the water during COVID, because people could go and just make videos of themselves working out or talking about working out or fitness or nutrition, anything like that, right? Big names that I started watching that were just coming up around this time were Greg Doucette, Jesse James West, Will Tennyson, this guy Derek More Plates More Dates. Those are probably the 4 most prominent ones that I was watching. There is one more that really blew up my obsession with bodybuilding, and this is the Mr. Olympia bodybuilding event, and specifically I saw Chris Bumstead win his second Mr. Olympia title. Now, I believe his first one was 2019 and his second was 2020, which is the year COVID happened. And that's where I was like, whoa, this is kind of cool. I like the idea of that you can change your body so much to look how you want it to. I was like, I have to be a part of this. And so I'm watching these transformation videos of people going from either really fat to really fit or really small to really huge. I was watching people cutting down and saying, oh, this is diet food. You got to eat your egg whites and chicken breasts, right? Protein powder. I'm watching all of these workout videos, these inspirational, motivational videos. And I was just totally hooked. I was like, this is the scene for me. This is what I have to be a part of now. I need to be a part of this. This has to be where my life is going. This is my goal. And I knew that I was going to go to college. I had already applied and gotten into school at this point. So I knew I was heading to school to get a degree of some kind. I'll save that topic for another video. But if I could break down why bodybuilding was appealing to me in just a few points, I would say it gave me clear goals to work towards. And I mean, to put it simply, the goal was be big and be lean. That was the goal. I really liked the idea of the huge physiques at the time. I thought that being really crazy huge, I would watch videos of every Mr. Olympia winner, since I forget what the initial date is, but 1950, say, or 55, I think. The first guy I believe was Larry Scott. If anyone wants to correct me on that one. I wanted to be like that. I thought that was cool. So let's move on there, because I'm kind of rambling down that too much here. So I guess you could say I was becoming a bodybuilder without realizing it. Now, I've heard people say different things about how you're not really a bodybuilder until you step on stage. And with that in mind, I was thinking, okay, the goal is not only to get as huge as possible, but to step on stage. Looking back on it now, I think that's kind of silly, but hey, that was a goal and I was working towards it. And I was looking up various workout splits. What's the best one? The main one that I stuck with probably for 2 or 3 years even before I experimented with other things was very simple push pull legs. This was a very copycat basic starter workout. You do your chest shoulder try on Monday, Tuesday you hit back and buys, Wednesday you hit legs, and you repeat. Thursday chest shoulder tries, Friday. What did I just say? Thursday. Friday would be push and pull, and the last day would be your legs. Sunday you rest. It's very repeatable. It's very simple. You know exactly what you're doing. It does kind of follow the ACSM guidelines of hitting your muscle groups twice a week. And I mean, it doesn't talk about doing sets and stuff, but there is kind of enough rest time to be able to do that twice a week. You know, you have 2 full days, about 48 full hours in between workouts, which is enough, science says, to recover from. Now, I'll get into a little bit later, maybe even another video about how I don't really believe that anymore, and I kind of do my own thing. But anyways, I digress from that. So back to my point, I'm becoming a bodybuilder without realizing it, right? So I got my push-pull legs, hitting the gym 6 days a week. I'm going to failure on every set. I think that's the way to go. Absolute failure. But also not programmed sets and reps. So if I did 2 sets and I felt like, say I was doing bench press and I was doing 2 sets and I felt at the end of those 2 sets that my chest was too tired to do anymore, that's it. I moved on to the next thing. But in a lot of cases, I thought, I have more in the tank, I'll do more. So I would do 3, 4, 5 sets of bench press, all to failure. And then move on from that. My workouts were like 2+ hours because I didn't know that you didn't need to do 4 exercises per muscle group. You know, I would do bench press, dips, incline bench press, decline bench press, the pec fly. I would do push-ups on top of all of that. That's like 5 or 6 exercises, and each one I would be going to failure every set, and I would do as many sets as I could until my chest just actually hurt. And this was every muscle group that I did. This is not a good way to recover. Science-based especially, but even not following science, this is not how you recover. You can't make gains. Now, at this point, I'm in the newbie gain era where anytime I just look at a dumbbell, I gain muscle. That's just your first like 6 months to 2 years of lifting. You just kind of put on muscle by just going through the motions and doing anything. Now, I wish I had the knowledge back then because I could have made it much more worth it. I could have grown even more and maybe even stepped on a stage so much sooner. But anyways, coming from COVID where I was sedentary and had gained a little bit of weight, I was trying to lean out. So the idea of building muscle, going up, muscle is heavy. Going up in weight and muscle and losing fat are very contradictory ideas. In order to build muscle, you ideally need a surplus of calories. This is, kind of idealistic, not very realistic, right? You're not always you can't bulk forever, right? The opposite of that is cutting. It's good for losing weight, losing fat. When you bulk, you put on muscle, but also some fat. And when you cut, you lose fat, but also some muscle. So, like I said, very contradictory. Calories is a word I wasn't super familiar with. That's kind of true. I was familiar with it in the sense that I knew food had calories in them. I did not know how calories worked, and I did not know how many you needed and how many you needed to gain or lose weight. So, my way to do it was to train as hard as I possibly could and eat as little as I could. This is a bad way to go. You're not going to get very far by doing this, both in building muscle and in losing weight. And this led to kind of like a binge problem. Again, this might be kind of a point for another video, but I was on very low calories and exercising a lot. It was pretty stressful on my body, and it would be on anyone's body. But this was my strategy for becoming a bodybuilder. So I never, I guess I never actually decided that I wanted to become a bodybuilder. It was more of kind of a vicarious decision through watching these videos. It's just by default of being surrounded by fitness content on YouTube and on Instagram, and I'm sure I had TikTok at the time. That was all my feed was, and that's all I cared about. So I don't think I sat down and wrote down on a piece of paper, I'm training to be a bodybuilder. It just kind of evolved that way naturally. And I slowly became someone who trained like one. Not a good way to go. Anyways, moving forward. Things aren't feeling quite right. The food is not helping. I'm not eating much. I'm eating very little some days and a lot on other days, and that's not good. My training is, I'm not tracking my training, but I'm still training hard. I'm just not tracking it, and this can lead to missing workouts. And when you miss a workout, you feel pretty down about yourself. You're like, oh, why did I have to miss this? Ugh. After the fact, of course. And I'm sure it was to something fun. I'm sure it was to play video games with my friends or go hang out or do something, right? And I'm missing a workout. Now, that puts a damper on bodybuilding. So the idea with bodybuilding is consistency. You need to be consistent in your diet, in your exercise, and your life in general. I mean, sleep schedule, right? What you're eating, drinking, thinking, sleeping, all of that. It's pretty dramatic. It's pretty dramatic. And that makes things complicated. Like I said about missing workouts, sometimes things just don't happen. You travel, right? And you got to sit on a plane for 8 hours. Well, it's pretty hard to get your 10,000 steps in and eat 1 gram per pound of body weight and get your workout in. Like, that's just not going to happen, right? And I was in a very closed off mindset. You see, a little side tangent here. I'm a very black and white person. I think all or nothing, 100% or 0%. And so on days where my diet is locked in, I'm eating perfectly, I get my steps in, hit my workout, that is considered a good day. On a day where I woke up and I was really craving a bowl of cereal for breakfast, I did not want my oatmeal with protein powder in it. That threw my whole day off. It's gone, out the window, in the trash. Pretty bad mindset to have. Good for bodybuilding, bad to have in general. So, like I was saying, things got complicated. Now, moving forward a little bit, so I guess I'll just say that I'll back off actually and say that kind of went on for about a year or so. Now, moving forward from that, I get to school and I study business administration, with a concentration in finance. That is not the move for me. I chose that because I didn't know what the hell to do, but that seemed right. Bad idea. 2 years in, I switched to exercise science. Specifically, my major was health and exercise science with a concentration in health promotion. Now, I chose the health promotion concentration because it was a simpler concentration, needed less classes and less difficult ones. I was already 2 years in. I did not want to add much more time to my graduation, and I just knew that if I did the harder one, there would be more possibility to have to, get bad grades in classes and have to retake them, or just take less classes at a time to be able to manage that. I didn't want to do that, so I chose the easier one. Still learn all the basic of the same thing. So everyone takes physiology, everyone takes kinesiology, everyone takes exercise prescription to learn about the ACSM guidelines, this, that, all the other, right? So I know about exercise science. I know about prescribing exercise to various populations. This kind of changes the way that I'm training, because at this point, my idea of bodybuilding is very gym bro. It's very bro science. It's very push-pull legs. It's very... It has all the same... the backbone is the same of, all the muscle groups 2 times per week. and training hard. But exercise science and the guidelines show differently. They show programming and periodization. They show going up every few weeks, changing it up to, kind of, you may have heard Arnold Schwarzenegger say you need to confuse the muscle, right? It's kind of true. Or I think he says shock the muscle is what he says. That's his famous thing. Shock the muscle. It's kind of true. Not literally in the sense of, ooh, one day I'm going to do push-ups. The next day I'm going to do a bench press. The third day I'm going to do dips. Not exactly like that, but more in the sense of a progression in periodization with how you program your workouts. Kind of with sets and reps rather than specific exercises. Not to say one day you should do 40 reps per set and the next day do 2 reps per set. But that's kind of, a less extreme version of that is the idea. And this is very cool. I'm introduced to new members on YouTube. Even in my exercise physiology class that I took just about 2 years or so ago, we watched this video with this guy, Mike Israetel. Now that's a name that I had heard, but I didn't watch his videos. I just didn't find him very interesting. But I started to, because I am told that this guy he knows what he's talking about in fitness. He's the one you should follow. He introduces himself every video as Dr. Mike, and because he has a PhD, right? In another video, I want to talk about why I don't like this guy now. But this is where I'm headed, right? We're just talking about the story of this, the journey into why I don't train like a bodybuilder. So, to sum up where we're at now, I got to school. I learned about exercise science. I learned the ACSM guidelines. This is what is recommended for the general public with slight variations on how to exercise. And it doesn't just include weightlifting. It includes, cardiovascular training. It includes core training. It includes, more stability sort of stuff too, balance, right? But I only cared about weights and building muscle. I cared only about hypertrophy at this point. And the thing is that there isn't one perfect program. And I'm realizing that more now and as time goes by. So I guess I'll save that again for that other video I want to talk about. At this point, I'm looking for the correct way to do things. Because I know about bro science. I have personal experience in training. And I now know about exercise science. What does the science show? What does the data show is the right way to do things? I know about Mike Israetel. There's another name, Jeff Nippard. He's the science-based lifting community. I had friends who cared about this and who thought that science-based is the way to go. They gave me this spreadsheet that they created, and oh my wow, it is the most in-depth tracker for weights that I've ever seen in my life. And I tried it for a few months, for probably a good half year. I did a full block of it. And then I started the second one, and I realized that I wasn't really making progress the way I liked it. And this is, now we're getting into volume, frequency, intensity. And with this spreadsheet, I'm like, this is it. I've got it. I've got the golden ticket. This is the right answer. But I'm kind of a cautious person. I kind of like to take advice and information I get, even at the academic level of a university, with a grain of salt. And so I'm questioning things. Is this really the best way? Some time goes by. Now I tried different ways of lifting. I've been introduced to some strongman stuff. I tried training like a strongman athlete. I tried, I did the push-pull legs. I did upper-lower. I did upper lower with I did an upper lower day, an upper day, a lower day, push pull leg day. That was a split. I did a front and back, posterior and anterior. Um, I've tried that. I've tried um, true bro split with just each body part each day. So Monday's chest, Tuesday's back, Wednesday's arms, Thursday's legs. Right. I've done that. I've done kind of total body splits where I do like 2 or 3 full body days a week. I've tried all of these splits, and I get to this point where I'm on YouTube, and all of a sudden I see this guy, this other YouTuber who I watch, and I won't mention his name, but he reviews this. He does a lot of like kind of reviewing and reactional kind of videos, and they're often things that I care about. But he did one in particular that was about this other guy named Solomon Nelson. Now, I hadn't heard this guy before. I didn't know who Solomon Nelson was. But Solomon Nelson did a dismantling video on Mike Israetel because Israetel apparently has a flawed PhD thesis paper, and a published one at that. And Solomon is critiquing it, dismantling it, basically taking away all of Israetel's credibility, at least for me. I no longer, I lost any credibility he had. I stopped believing it in him. Now, Mike Israetel has some muscle. He is a competitive pro bodybuilder. I believe he's a pro. And he obviously knows something, and he's doing some things right. But the problem is what Solomon is pointing out is that Mike Israetel, is marketing and advertising that he has the best way, and that you should buy his program because it is the best. Not that it's good, not that it's great, but it is the one, the best, and that science-based lifting is the only way to go. And that's what peeves me, is that I think there isn't one true way to anything. I don't think there's one true way. I think that any road, any path, anything you go down and you try to do, there isn't one true way. There's multiple ways to attack anything. And that's what I didn't like about Israetel. And I was seeing that with Solomon. I always felt that there's a reason I never liked him to begin with. It just wasn't interesting to me. It's not what I believed in. But seeing Solomon Nelson's video, and I rewatched it after, not the reaction video, but just Solomon's video in full. And he has a lot of great points. There are many faults with Israetel's video. Now, I don't want this to be about why I don't like Mike Israetel or what's wrong with his PhD thesis. So I'll kind of move on from there. But I just wanted to point out that he's kind of the problem with the science-based community right now. And I think Jeff Nippard, another name like that, kind of the same idea, but to a lesser extent for me. Anyway, let's move on from that because it's getting me a little peeved off. So I talked about my experimentation with different things, and something that I kind of wanted to, well, I guess one of the things I kind of want to leave off on as I kind of wind down here is functional strength. And somewhere I want to go with this is there's two main points I want to touch on. The first is functional strength when it comes to an aging population, and also my own experience with my own body. So with an aging population, things that are difficult for people as they age, getting up from a chair. So a sit to stand test is a very common physical fitness test you can do for an older person to see how many times they can stand up and sit down in a certain time period. Overhead reaching, so being able to put things away in a cabinet, in a shelf, on top of the fridge. That is very important. Your grip strength, so think about carrying your groceries. So things that might mimic that movement would be, a farmer carry, or dumbbell sort of shrugs, right? Um, let's see what did I touch on. So you're basically what I'm talking about is your leg strength, your grip, and I'm gonna combine grip with kind of like back strength, um, your shoulder strength, and then I know I said back, but your low back specifically. Lower back strength is very important, and that leads me directly into my own personal experience with my body. My own personal experience, and it's that a few years ago I was lifting, and I don't know if I was distracted or if I wasn't concentrating correctly. I wasn't bracing my core, and I was doing a barbell bent over row, and I just felt something pop in my back. I mean, I heard it. I actually heard it, and it made it made such a loud noise that I heard it, and that really hurt, and it did not heal very well. It took a long time, and I think this was a 2 year adventure. I even went to a physical therapist, and he did dry needling, and he gave me stretches to do. That's all great, except I think the stretches were the dry needling was a very temporary relief. It helped for maybe less than a week, maybe 3 4 days. Stretching only helped when I would stretch. So if I stretched, it felt good. But then throughout the day, it would start to get worse again until I stretched again. That's not a permanent fix either. So I kind of figured this out. It's kind of by myself, but through some research. And it's that in these situations where I was getting hurt, it's because I had hurt a certain muscle group and then continued to baby that muscle group instead of strengthen it again. So instead of, performing my own physical therapy on my own muscle, I was just avoiding it altogether. And what do you do when you don't use a muscle? It atrophies, which means that it gets smaller and, more or less like disintegrates and goes away, right? When you don't use it, you lose it. It's very true. So, what do? I start doing Supermans, bird dogs. I eventually get into doing back extensions when I'm strong enough to be able to do that and work that way up. And back extensions were really, really helpful. Sometimes it did make things hurt, but I still, I persevered through that. Um, Core training. So core doesn't just include your abs. Core is your abdominals, but also your serratus, your obliques. It's got your upper labs, your lower abs, your inner abs, your outer abs, right? Basically, it's your entire trunk of strength and stability, and so you need to strengthen that, and that's where I think functional fitness is the most important. Another thing that I want to mention is that bodybuilders are not healthy people. They're usually our bodies are not made to be bigger than slightly muscular. So as soon as you have some true mass to you, you have to intentionally eat a certain way to keep that. If you don't hit your protein and your macros, and you don't get your cardio in every single day, you can't maintain that physique. You will lose your muscle unless you're on performance enhancing drugs. But I'm making this video to the point of saying that those are probably bad. Okay, this is kind of getting long. I want to leave this off on a note where functional fitness is where I'm training today. I go to the gym about 3 days a week, maybe 4. I don't have a plan right now, as in I don't have periodization and optimization. In my last video, I talked about not being so optimal. This is kind of following that. This is the follow up video to that one, and yeah, 3 days a week. I train. I still train hard, almost to failure, but I kind of train by intuition. I train by how things feel, what's sore, what do I need to work on, and I go functional movements. I do, a belt squat and lunges, or walking lunges with dumbbells. Those are my leg exercises. I guess you could also put in there that I do back extensions, and I try to put a focus on my hamstrings there. Um, and that's important. And overhead press, farmer carries, grip strength. I do cleans, like a kind of a clean and jerk with dumbbells, kind of like the circus dumbbell. I took that from strongman stuff. I stopped deadlifting, but I still care about picking things up and that extension of the hips and lower back. And so instead of deadlifting, I now try to do more of like kettlebell swings and ball slams. And so basically, I just want a body that will not get hurt. I've been hurt too many times in lifting, and I want to prevent that and eliminate that from happening again. So, if you enjoyed this and you want to see me talk about more random stuff, just know this is unscripted. I just talk about what I'm thinking while drinking my coffee or water, and yeah, it's whatever comes to mind. So, if you enjoyed it, stick around. I'll probably put another one up here soon.